Yes, welcome to the second module. So in this session, we are discussing the second part of second module, that is CPU scheduling. In first part, we have seen threads as multi-threaded programming. This is Pradeep Kumar from Department of CSC, AJ Institute of Engineering and Technology, Mangaluru. In this second part, we are going to discuss basic concepts of scheduling criterias, and different scheduling algorithms we are going to discuss as the important part of second module, CPU scheduling algorithms. Then we are going to discuss about thread scheduling. So these are the four major concepts we are going to see under this particular part. So these are the objectives behind the module of CPU scheduling. So as we know, via CPU scheduling, which is the basis for multi-programmed operating systems. So how CPU can schedule its services to the programs, to the particular applications, how it will provide CPUs, how it will serve different IOs, all those comes under this. Then we are going to discuss about CPU scheduling algorithms in detail. That is describe various CPU scheduling algorithms. Then we'll see how to select a best suitable CPU scheduling algorithm for a particular system. Okay, as an introduction, so the CPU scheduling is nothing but providing the service of the CPU for various purposes. So when we say providing, on the other hand, say for example, if your machine is of a single processor system, then if it is a single processor system, then only one process can run at a time. As we know, only one process is there. So other processors must wait till the previous task is completed. So the CPU will wait until it will become, the process will wait until the CPU becomes free. So over here, the major task is to how to utilize in maximum strength the CPU, how CPU strength can be utilized at most or maximum. So with respect to that is concerned, when we have multi-programming concept, so we need to verify whether our CPU is utilized maximum, or maximum utilization of CPU must be there when we have multi-programming. So along with that, every time whenever one process has to wait, another process can take over the use of CPU if it is a single processor. That is the scenario behind it. In general, scheduling is nothing but it is a basic fundamental right of an operating system, as it's supposed to provide a service to the individual programs. So however, before using the resources, before utilizing the resources by any application, so the computer's operating system should schedule for that particular application. Then only the application can make use of the resources. Otherwise, the application cannot use, the program cannot use resources. So in this, we use some of the terminologies, that is burst cycle, CPU, IO, burst cycle. So this burst cycle, under which we have CPU burst and IO burst. So these are the two terminologies we use frequently in this particular concept, scheduling. CPU or IO burst cycle is nothing but this process execution consists of a cycle. So this is the terminology you're supposed to remember. One complete cycle. One complete cycle. Okay. Process execution consists of a cycle of CPU execution and IO wait. So both this CPU execution and IO wait. So now, when we say the state of a process under execution, it is called a CPU burst. The state of process. So in what state a particular process is, during the execution. So that terminology for a CPU is CPU burst, and the state of process under IO request and its handling is called IO burst. So that is CPU burst and IO burst. CPU burst is nothing but the state of process under execution, state of particular process. For example, if there is only one process, one processor is there, so that is providing access for a particular application. So during its execution, if it is utilizing CPU, then it is a CPU burst. At that particular state, the state at which it is operating, and during that execution, if there is utilization of IO input output also, then it is IO burst. So that is the two terminology we are going to use frequently in this particular concept, that is CPU scheduling. So one is CPU burst, another one is IO burst. CPU burst is nothing but, I am stressing again, CPU stress is nothing but the state of process under execution, and IO burst is nothing but the state of process under IO request and its handling. So during entire process, during entire execution. So now when we say processes, it may be either in CPU burst or in IO burst cycle or anywhere, right, in between also. So process execution starts whenever there is a CPU burst, whenever there is a service CPU burst, then another IO burst. So first CPU burst and then IO burst. So that is the routine. But at last, during the termination, the final CPU burst ends with a system request to terminate the execution. So that is how it works. So we'll see how it is. So in this diagram, we can see the sequence of CPU and IO burst. So starts from, say for example, the execution starts from loading, ETL, extract, transform and load, as we say in general, loading first. So whatever the program or wherever may be the program counter look after the location or the instruction address that is to be loaded, next instruction to be executed. So that is load via load. So we have load, store, add, store and read from the file. So this is loaded and then it is added and then read from the file. So these three performed by the CPU. That's why CPU burst. Because these processes, loading, adding and reading, handled by the CPU. Loading from the storage, adding to the storage and reading from the file, that is under the handler of a CPU. That's why CPU burst. Then it will wait for input output, that is wait for IO, that is IO burst. So after getting this one, we have, after getting the CPU is ready, then IO request has been sent. So that is IO burst. Then again, once the IO request is ready, then something should happen under supervision of CPU, that is store increment, index should be updated. So whatever the index is updated with the memory, that should be returned to the file, that is again comes under CPU burst. Again it will wait for IO. So this is entire one set CPU and IO request is treated as one burst. Similarly, load, store and so many, the same thing will be continued. This is the sequence of CPU burst and IO burst. So whenever there is a last or final CPU burst, it will end up with a system request to terminate the execution. When we say, if you compare with this particular histogram, we can easily identify in this frequency and burst duration. When there is a continuous speed at which there is execution, then there is a high frequency. If there is no such requests or durations, then it is based on that it is drawn. There is frequency and burst duration. We'll see that exact picture how it is later. Moving further, we have a CPU scheduler. So its job is to select, CPU scheduler's job is to select from among the processes in ready queue and allocates the CPU to one of them. So how it can be done? So whenever the CPU becomes idle, The OS job is to select one of the processes which is ready to execute. So from where to select? From, it is selected from the ready queue. So when CPU becomes idle, the OS must select one of the processes, selects from one of the processes among the several processes which are readily available in ready queue, and allocates the CPU. It will allocate the CPU. The selection is carried out by the short-term scheduler. The selection process, selecting of the processes is carried out by the short-term scheduler for or CPU scheduler. So however, it is a queue. Just the job is first in, first out, right? Whichever process is in the first, so that will be served first. Similarly over here, so that is scheduled for CPU. So a ready queue can be implemented as a FIFO queue. That is a priority queue or a tree or a simply, you can say, a linked list, another linked list. So all these processes are available for execution. That is readily available in this particular queue. So now, so this queue may be ordered in various ways. Ordering may be in various ways, either based on the burst time, based on the execution cycle, or all those various criteria. We'll see that particular part in next slides. So how to select, how to execute? The CPU scheduling decisions may take place when a process switches from running to waiting state. So we know there are different states of processes, the scheduling, right? So from running state to the waiting state can be switched, the scheduling, or the switches from running to ready state. The next stage after waiting, it is ready state. Then switches from waiting to ready, running to ready, waiting to ready, or the decision may happen when CPU terminates its job. So these are the 4 different stages when CPU scheduling decisions can be made. So either switching from running to waiting state, or switching from running to ready state, or from waiting to ready state. So now scheduling under 1 and 4, this first one and 4, out of these is non-preemptive. So what is non-preemptive? Non-preemptive is something like, so once the CPU has been allocated a process, the process is busy with that particular CPU. It will release only when the execution terminated or execution gets over. So that is preemptive. Sorry, non-preemptive. So if it is preemptive, the rest of these 2 and 3, the process under execution may be released from the CPU in the middle of execution. That is preemptive. So remember these 2 terminologies. Non-preemptive 1 and 4, it won't release the CPU whenever the process is under execution. It won't release the CPU until it completes its execution. That is 1 and 4. That is non-preemptive. These 2 are preemptive. So the process under execution may be released in the middle of execution, in between the execution, to do some other tasks, immediate tasks or any other emergency tasks. So how to do that? Consider access to shared data. All other scheduling is preemptive. Consider access to shared data. Consider preemption while in kernel mode. Consider interrupts occurring during crucial OS activities. So these are the 3 possibilities when there are chances of releasing CPU by 2 and 3. That is, sometimes to access a shared data. CPU at that time to access the shared data. To access shared data is nothing but it is IO request. So that can be done via stopping the execution by the CPU or by the process. Process may release the CPU. Second chance is preemption while in kernel mode. If it is in kernel mode, it can be released. Or if something else, emergency happened due to some interrupts, crucial OS activities should be takes place, at that time it can be released. So that is under preemptive. So preemptive is nothing but it can release the CPU in between the execution. Non-preemptive, it won't release during the execution. What won't release? CPU by the process. Fine, understood? Okay. And we have something called dispatcher. So dispatchers, this is another component which is very much needed for our CPU scheduling functionality. So its job is to, the dispatcher's job is to provide control of the CPU to the process selected by the scheduler. So how to give that? So dispatcher module gives control of the CPU to the process selected by the short-term scheduler. So how to give that? Via switching context or switching to user mode or jumping to the proper location in the user program to restart the program. So this dispatching or dispatcher's job should be always faster, as fast as possible, because for every process the switching should happen in during the execution, in between providing this CPU and selecting the processes, selecting the from the queue, that is handled by the dispatcher. So how to do that? By switching context, switching to user mode and jumping to the proper location in the user program to restart the program if something happens in between. So dispatcher's job is to give control of the CPU to the particular process. How to give? For example, in this case, if you consider non-preemptive, so 1 and 4 switches from running to waiting state and terminate. So these two are non-preemptive. So in this case, the process won't release the CPU in between the execution. So now no need to worry. If this is the case, it should release the CPU whenever we need. So when we need these three chances. So while releasing the CPU, so these are the possibilities, either to switch into user mode, jump into proper location. So there is the providing control of the CPU. That is the job of dispatcher. And it should be, the dispatching should be as fast as possible, because the latency will come to picture. Time it takes for the dispatcher to stop one process and start another running. So that is to halt something, to halt a process which is already under execution and start the execution by the another, with the another. So that is in which in that particular duration there should not be any delay, should not be any latency. Otherwise the execution may affect. That is the scenario behind a dispatcher. Moving further, we have different scheduling criteria. As we know, different CPU scheduling algorithms. Each CPU scheduling algorithms have different properties. So the selection of any algorithm is again sole or decision by the use case or by the user or by the application. That is again the basis of the one class of processes over another. So many criteria can be suggested for comparing CPU scheduling algorithms. So the criteria are these: CPU utilization, throughput, turnaround time, waiting time, and response time. So coming to CPU utilization. So this CPU utilization, which will keep the CPU as busy as possible. This is one of the scheduling criteria. The CPU must be kept busy throughout. So for example, we can say CPU utilization maybe starts from 0 to 100%. Sometimes in general, we may say it is from 40 to 90%. As far as for an example, if you see, consider you have a Windows operating system, any operating system, okay, Windows operating system. So you are typing a Microsoft Word file in your Windows machine, laptop or desktop. Okay, during the typing, during you editing some of the files or creating some of the file, just try to do this exercise. Press Ctrl Alt Delete. You'll get a prompt saying either force shutdown or something like that, and select from that list, select Task Manager, and in which go to processes. You can see a separate window might have opened, in which you can see different columns, and in which you can see IO and CPU utilization in the form of table. You can see the percentage of CPU utilized by that Microsoft Word application. So that is how to trace out CPU utilization if you are making use of Windows system. So that is based on the percentage we can decide. So as much as possible, the CPU should be kept busy. So this is one of the criteria, CPU utilization. Second criteria is throughput. Throughput is nothing but number of processes that complete their execution per time unit. So based on number of processes. So in general, as we discussed in the previous case, that is CPU utilization, CPU must be kept busy throughout. So each time CPU is very busy executing processes one by one. So now, so the number of processes that complete their execution per time unit. So number of processes that completed their execution by the CPU per time unit. Say for example, per second, how many processes will complete its execution. So that is its throughput. Okay, fine. The next criteria is turnaround time. So in this turnaround time, it is nothing but the amount of time to execute a particular process. From the point of say a particular process, we can say how long a particular process takes to execute. That is turnaround time. For example, if you we can give an example. From the time of submission of a process till the time of completion. So that is turnaround time. On the other hand, so this turnaround time is nothing but it is the sum of periods spent waiting to get into memory. Understood? For example, you open a particular Windows Word file to read one single page. You have opened Microsoft MS Word file. You open one single page. So the time at which speed you can complete reading of that particular single page, that is turnaround time. On the other hand, whenever you open a particular document from the memory and you close it, terminate it, so that is the turnaround time, the time taken to read the content of a particular file, that is turnaround time of your reading with respect to that particular document. Okay, so in more specific, it is amount of time to execute a particular process. On the other hand, then we have a waiting time. Fourth scheduling criteria, waiting time. So it is the waiting time. This is the amount of time a process has been waiting in the ready queue. As we know, we have a ready queue. Number of processes are gathered over here for execution. So for a particular process, how much time it's supposed to wait in the queue? So that is waiting time. So we can calculate average wait time also, right? Average wait time also can be calculated. So that is the amount of time a process which is been waiting in the ready queue. That is waiting time. Next, the last one is that is the response time. Response time, it is the amount of time it takes from when a request has request submitted until the first response is produced. One thing supposed to remember, it is not the output, it is for time sharing. So what do you mean by that? The time taken from the submission of a request until the first response is produced. For example, to execute, consider a situation. You suppose you are uh, consider a C program. Consider a simple C program using switch. A simple calculator has been designed by you using switch. Now is the time to, now everything is fine. There is no error, compiled successfully. Now the time to run the program. Control R. Using switch, you implemented the simple calculator. The 4 different operations. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 for addition, 2 for subtraction, 3 for multiplication, 4 for division. Any other choice, 5 or any other. The program should be any other choice. You can say, you can give a message saying that please input correct values. Then if you press 9, the program should terminate. So this is a program you developed now. So now response time is nothing but whenever you run the program, you'll get a prompt, select, enter your choice with the 1, 2, 3, 4 and 9. So this is whenever you get that particular response, the time taken from that particular execution, whenever you start from control R till you get this particular intermediate message, enter your choice. That is response time. So now you are not getting the output, but it is a first response received by the process. So the definition says the amount of time it takes from when a request was submitted until the first response is produced. So that is response time. After that, you may give a values 2 and 3. Then you can select 1 for addition and so on until you get the final output. So that is response time. Okay. So any clarification so far? So these are the different terminologies. These terminologies we are going to make. We are making use frequently in all our algorithms. So we have seen what is uh, CPU burst, IO burst, what is burst cycle, and then we have seen the sequence. So CPU and IO burst must be in a sequence, and if it is the last one, then CPU burst along with the termination signal. That is how it works. Then the scheduler, different decisions has been made. Preemptive, categorized preemptive and non-preemptive. Preemptive are, you can release the CPU in between the execution. Non-preemptive are, it cannot release the CPU in between the execution. So out of these different contexts, so 1 and 4, that is switches from running to waiting state, and when it terminates, it is non-preemptive. Those CPUs are non-preemptive. Okay. Then dispatcher, the job is to allocate the CPU for a particular process. How it allocates, nothing but it gives, on the other hand, it gives control of the CPU to a particular process. So how it provides, either switching context or switching to user mode, or jumping to the proper location of the program to restart the program. So out of these, it should be continuous, so that there should not be any delay in switching over different CPUs, when switching over different processes for execution with respect to preemptive. And so these are the scheduling criteria. CPU utilization, nothing but the utilizing the CPU by different processes. Throughput, number of processes that completes its execution. Turnaround time, that is the amount of time to execute a particular process whenever you give a request till you get final output. So that is turnaround time. Waiting time is amount of time a process has been waiting in the ready queue. Response time, it is the amount of time it takes from when a request was submitted until the first response, intermediate response. First response is produced. Okay, these are the different terminologies. Scheduling algorithms. Before starting with scheduling algorithm, so these are the major optimization criteria that we is going to follow. Maximum CPU utilization, maximum throughput, minimum turnaround time, minimum waiting time, minimum response time. So this is with respect to these criteria. So these are the terminology or optimization criteria that we supposed to follow. So we should get maximum CPU utilization out of the algorithm. We should get maximum throughput, minimum turnaround around time or minimum total execution time, minimum waiting time in the queue or in the pool of processes, and minimum response time. So these are the things we are expecting from our scheduling algorithm. Okay, so any doubts so far, please raise. Any doubts so far?